Most doctors who deal with holistic healing will tell you that the majority of all health problems stem from disorders of the digestive system. Specifically, the stomach, the small intestine, and the large intestine. We commonly refer to this as the gastrointestinal system. So if you're experiencing any signs or symptoms of gastrointestinal problems, then getting these taken care of and healed is really vitally important for your overall health and well-being. In this first of a two-part series, we're going to discuss some of the symptoms of gastrointestinal disorders. We're also going to talk about some of the diagnoses that come along with these symptoms. And finally, we're going to explain the digestive process from beginning to end. In the second part, we're going to be talking about the 4 R's of intestinal healing, some tips that you can utilize to help heal the gastrointestinal system. So let's start off with some of the signs and symptoms that you may be experiencing if you're having any gastrointestinal problems. One of the most common things that we may experience is a nervous stomach or a burning stomach. Some other symptoms may be bloating or gas, either directly after eating or several hours after eating. We may be having difficulty digesting certain foods, maybe it's spicy foods. We may have altered bowel movements, either constipation, diarrhea, or a combination of the two. You also may feel nauseous or queasy after eating. And in more serious conditions, we may also be experiencing abdominal pain. Now let's discuss some of the commonly diagnosed conditions that are associated with gastrointestinal problems. Some of these diagnoses are irritable bowel syndrome, acid reflux, stomach or intestinal ulcers, diverticulitis or diverticulosis, colitis, food allergies or sensitivities, candida or yeast infections, and some of the more serious conditions such as Crohn's disease or celiac disease. Now, I certainly recommend having the proper diagnostic testing done so that we can distinguish whether you're dealing with a more simple problem or a more complex problem. In any case, using the 4 R's of intestinal healing that we'll be talking about in the next segment can certainly help with any of these conditions. I think to better understand digestion, we need to go through it from the beginning. So let's start with the food that you're placing in your mouth. When you first put food in your mouth, and in fact even before that, when you first smell food, saliva begins to accumulate in the mouth. Saliva is extremely important because it has enzymes that will begin the breakdown of food. It's also extremely important to chew our food and break it down so that further digestion is much easier. Once we swallow the food, it enters into our stomach and is bathed in hydrochloric acid and other enzymes. This further helps to break down the food into smaller particles that are easily digested. Once the food leaves the stomach, it goes into the first part of the small intestine called the duodenum. It is here where the majority of digestion actually takes place. Enzymes are released from the gallbladder and from the pancreas, which breaks the food down into smaller particles, which then can be readily absorbed in the remaining parts of the small intestine. After this digestion and absorption takes place, the remaining material exits the small intestine and enters into the large intestine. Small bacteria, which we call probiotics, now help to finish the digestive process by breaking down the food material even more. Once this process is done, the food moves along the large intestine, water is reabsorbed, the material is compacted and ready for excretion. I thought it was important to take you through this process because interference with this process anywhere along the line can create some of the disorders and symptoms that we spoke of earlier. In our next segment, we're going to be talking about the 4 R's of intestinal healing. Using these 4 R's, we can help to restore the integrity of the gastrointestinal system and relieve many of the symptoms that we had talked about previously.